First of all, I think your analysis was very straight line. History doesn't run in a straight line.
Kid, you cannot tell your neighbor he is stealing ducks when you are stealing funds.
As High Commissioner, I was wrong. As Akash Persaud, I reacted naturally how any person would have.
I did not come here for that kind of abuse. I did not come here for that kind of abuse. If you're going to go along that road, I'll walk off.
But it's all okay once they're talking. If they weren't talking, I could not have been here today.
You got ADHD.
I got nothing.
Calm down.
I think I've done enough in terms of taking our team out of trouble from losing.
Tomorrow, Taylor. That's good.
I'm reading the script now, and the first person that comes to my mind to play a detective,
Yes,
but
the
an
Chinese
erratic
Mikhail
detective, Mikhail Rodriguez.
Why an African slap an Indian? Why a man and slap a woman? Look, how you deal with that? You deal with that.
We must encourage platforms like this because it brings together different people and allows for discussions to take place in our country on a multiplicity of fundamental issues.
Kingdom, you apologizing for something you think I did is wrong. I don't want you to do that, and you should not have done that. Hi there. Welcome to the Freddie Kissoon Show with co-host Akash Persaud. Thanks for being with us wherever you are. Good evening from our studio in Queenstown, Georgetown, or good morning if you're in London. Good night, good afternoon. Once again, thanks for being with us. Our guest this evening need no introduction. He is attorney, one of the prominent attorneys of Guyana, Mr. ROYSDALE FORDE, and one of the contenders to lead the PNC. So you may be watching at the next leader of the PNC, and you may be watching, you are watching a man who may be the presidential candidate in the 2025 elections. As I said before, ROYSDALE, I can't call him Mr. Ford. I've known ROYSDALE too long as a friend. So, ROYSDALE need no introduction. Thanks for being with here, Akash, my co-host Akash Persaud. Now, let's get to the protocol. ROYSDALE, thanks for being here, and Akash
Pleased
Persaud.
to meet you, man.
Thank you for having me on your show.
My first things first, good luck in your campaign at the PNC Congress. Good luck in your endeavors to become the leader.
Thank you very much.
How have things been with you? I've known you a long time. I've said in this program to Ubraj Narain, the former mayor, he was our guest, and I related two incidents to him, and I have to repeat that because when your children see this interview, they may find what I'm about to say interesting. I got to know ROYSDALE FORDE when I took the university to court for not being transparent in the application of law students. A father had come to me with tears in his eyes that his daughter was denied entry and her friend had lesser grades than her, and she got in. And I was very moved. So I took the university to the court. My lawyer was Anin Nandalal. We lost it was two injunctions we sought. We lost one. The court said that we should have brought the injunction not against the head of the Department of Law, but the faculty head. So Justice Moore assigned $250,000 bail. That was very high. Cost. So we applied to the Court of Appeal to reduce the bail, and Justice Perry presided. And fortunately, Justice Perry knew me before I was born, because he knew my sisters. and he was a Workmanville man. So the Aninandalal applied for a substantial reduction in bail. And I think Mr. Rex McKay, I may be wrong, ROYSDALE was working with Mr. Rex McKay then, and Mr. Rex McKay was very, very adamant. But ROYSDALE did not oppose the reduction of bail, and the bail was reduced from 250 to 100,000. And I was very grateful for that. And I think around that time, we got to know each other. That was around 94, 95, 96. And during our friendship, one day I walked into his office to discuss politics, and I didn't have a monitor for my computer at that same time. And I saw this monitor tucked away in his office. I said, ROYSDALE, what you doing with that monitor? He said, I'm not using it, it's there. I said, give me the monitor. And he gave me the monitor, and I used that monitor for 4 years. So we have a background of friendship. So once again, ROYSDALE, thanks for your open-mindedness with my bail and the computer. Now, how have you been doing?
I've been doing very well. Living in Guyana is quite a challenge, as you would recognize. As a politician, as a lawyer, being tasked with the responsibility of being the Shadow Attorney General at this time is a task that I take very seriously. We may have different political positions, but I believe fundamentally when we look to see what's happening in the country, we cannot deny that the advancement of the rule of law, of rights and freedoms of the citizens and of the country will ultimately inure to the benefit of all, whether we take different positions momentarily on issues, ultimately it's towards the advancement of the country as a whole. So I've dedicated my energies since at least 2020, since being the Shadow Attorney General, to focus on a number of cases which you will be well acquainted with, the recent one being the teachers' issue, in seeing how I could contribute my skill, my knowledge, and my expertise in advancing the society.
This program, the people who are watching this program are just waiting for the questions to flow in relation to you know what.
I know.
Everybody's just waiting on those questions. So I hand you over to Akash.
Mr. Forde, it's a pleasure having you here.
Thank you, Akash.
There was a letter published in Kaichor News yesterday, Tuesday, June 18th. And let me read what that letter, let me read a little part of that. I'm not sure if you saw it. It says, in every regard, the candidacy of ROYSDALE Forde has revealed that his is the superior campaign, candidate, team, program, and vision, and likely the next leader of the PNCR. But for procedural irregularities, administrative failures, and partisan manipulation and machinations seemingly aimed at frustrating and depressing his likely support. This says a lot. At the last nominations, were there, let's bring back this word, discrepancies that were notable that you think may be of concern? Because this is a letter that was published only yesterday morning.
Firstly, I believe that in relation to any electoral process, transparency must underscore it. In relation to the nomination, which you would have seen, I had no one present at the date when the nominations came in. So I'm not in position to say I received 20, 40, 60, 80 nominations. I have to rely on the information received. The process leading to a nomination based on the party rules require that each party group meet, invite the members to a meeting, they sit, they decide on the person who they want to have be the leader, the different offices. You put that down in writing, and then at another stage, or maybe at that stage, you indicate by the group having a meeting, they determine who will be the delegates for those processes. I'm aware, and it's not a party crown jewels sort of secret, that there are instances where groups met purportedly without the membership being involved. For example, I am the member of the Northeast Penitence Group, and I'm using that as a poster child. I'm a member of that group. I see Freddie looking at me funny. I'm a member of that group.
Looks at me this evening.
And in that group, I was never invited to be part of a meeting to determine who will be the delegates.
Are you the head of that group?
No, I'm not the head. I'm a member of the group.
Okay.
I was not invited to any meeting that determined who the group will be supporting for any of the positions that are available. I'm also aware that groups were directed, some forcibly, some by way of administrative machinations, to make nominations for different persons. So I'm not concerned particularly about the nomination. It is a harbinger of potential irregularities which may further manifest themselves. But I'm concerned by the fact that it's a question of transparency and that the rules largely would not have been complied with.
One of the most famous names in the PNC, and a prominent lawyer, a parliamentarian, a shadow attorney general, belongs to a group, and that group met, and he is not invited. So, no, something is wrong there. Those names, I mean, you have about 25, 30 well-known, prominent PNC people. They're known throughout the length and breadth of Guyana. And you are telling me that one of them belongs to a party group. That party group calls a meeting. I mean, automatically the first person invited is the member of parliament or the guy who is the... No, something is wrong there, man. Something is wrong there.
I agree with you, Freddie. Something is materially wrong there. And I'm using that example because, you know, when you say certain things, people think that you're fabricating them. But it could be no greater example than one which you're personally aware of, personally involved in, and which you could put out as an example as to what happened.
Who then arrogated to themselves the right to issue the invitation in a group in which ROYSDALE FORDE, Central Committee member, leadership contender, is a member and not being invited? I am contending that there may have been a directing hand there.
I'm not in a position to say, but I'm saying that that is an example of what would have happened in many instances across the party landscape, so to speak.
ROYSDALE, I am not too sure how this interview is going to go. We don't prepare this interview, but I am a little bit. I saw your thing in the press. I know that you belong to that group, but hearing it, reading something and hearing somebody speak, this doesn't look good. This doesn't look good. I have to say, I have to do my media work. I have to pursue my journalistic obligation in an interview like this and say, it doesn't look good.
I agree. It does not conform with the requirements of the party, so it cannot look good. It cannot look good. You know, one of the things that would have happened over time is that people want to say that you mustn't discuss these matters because they belong to the party and they must be held within the party. My view is different. My view is that to the extent that there's compliance with the rules, there's nothing to say. To the extent that there's non-compliance with the rules, you have to speak out. We would have written numerous letters to the party's Congress committee through the General Secretary, and we have not received a single response. I believe the count now is about 12 to 13 letters, and we would not have received a single response from the General Secretary dealing with the constitution of the Congress Committee, dealing with the constitution of the Accreditation Committee, inquiries in relation to who would constitute the electoral committees in relation to the party, irregularities in relation to group memberships, groups that complain to us that they have not been allowed to put in nominations, the processes in relation to nominations. So all these things would have been written. I believe that I would have seen references and quotes in relation to the letters that the team would have submitted in the media. So it's not a secret anymore. So we would have had numerous instances where we sought to comply with the rules internally. People would say you mustn't speak out about it, but people have short memories. You would recall, Freddie, that the current leader of the party, Mr.
Used to speak out all the time.
Used to speak out all the time.
He took the leader of the PNC to court, Robert Corbin.
You know that. There would have been statements made right outside of Congress Place where he said that the party's elections would have been rigged. There would have been instances where he would have written public communication saying that Desmond Hoyt must go home in order the party could revitalize and regroup to move forward towards the 2006 election. So the question of my team writing and the consequence of writing is that it gets into the public must be understood that this is not a new occurrence in the party. The current leader himself, by his track record of being out there and speaking publicly in relation to these issues, would have done it before. So we be very selective sometimes in condemning and castigating certain occurrences. But these things form part of the fabric of the history of the party.
Akash?
Mr. Forde, you spoke about transparency just now, which struck me. And in doing some research, I came across an article that was published on the Amara Waves on June 14, 2024. It says, and it quotes Mr. Norton, the PNCR Congress is slated for June 28th to the 30th, at which Mr. Norton hopes there will be transparent elections. And here is a quote: "We will ensure that the party Congress has its proper systems in place, and that in the final analysis we have an open and transparent election." Are you confident that this is going to happen, Mr. Forde?
I am not confident that that is going to happen. I'm not confident that it could happen because when I look at the commencement of the process all the way to where we are now, I am not satisfied. I am exactly in the same position that, or probably worse, where Aubrey Norton would have been in 2014, where he felt that the party Congress and its machinations was undemocratic. It's not likely to comply with the standards, and he came out and he spoke about it. We are 10 years later, in my opinion, in the same position or worse. Unfortunately, we have the very person who championed transparency 10 years, a decade ago, currently in the seat of leadership and in a position to ensure that there's transparency. Transparency is not something that you go and buy by Fogarty's and you just brush it on some documents or an appearance, an illusion. It has to be rooted in the processes. Nothing has happened in relation to the letters. The letters are written on the basis of the questioning of the process, and we to date have not received a single response. Not one. Not one. In relation to any matter in relation to the transparency and the management of these elections. Mr. Norton has decided virtually and nominated and had himself approved to be the Congress director. He said that this was a common occurrence in the party. I have researched from past leaders, past general secretaries, past assistant general secretaries, and I can find no instance where the sitting leader of the party is the Congress director in an election in which he is a contestant. You could understand what I'm saying, Freddie? So when we're speaking about transparency, I believe that in itself indicates a certain course of conduct which is inconsistent with transparency. You don't see at the national elections the sitting president at the 2020 elections. Granger wasn't on the Elections Commission. And at the next elections, it's impossible to conceive an instance where whoever is the leader of the party or whoever is the leader of the PNC or the PPP or the presidential candidate at the time being on the elections commission.
So this must be a really massive conflict of interest lying in front of us.
Well, we have articulated that. We have written letters in which we would have indicated that this is a serious conflict of interest. You cannot be the Congress director. You can be part of the process, making decisions in relation to the elections and the processes, and other contestants are shut out from participating in these elections. I am here today and in different instances across the length and breadth of the country, and I'm saying what I have to say. I am without fear in relation to these issues. The 13 or 14 letters are available because they're out in public. It's no secret. So this is where we are.
Mr. Kissoon, allow me to ask this.
Sure.
Allow me to ask this. You know, while I'm listening to you, what is it that is coming to me all the time? I've read this saying many times and I've seen it. When someone can be captain of the ship, perhaps let it go down. All of us have to suffer. Do you get this feeling sometimes, man?
I'm not sure that is the feeling. I think that the feeling is more one in which, in relation to the elections, the internal elections, there's a desire to ensure that people win. And people would want to take advantage of all possible opportunities to ensure and guarantee their victory.
Absolutely.
But there must be a certain standard and principle upon which any electoral contest needs to take place. We want to advance the party as democratic, and I believe that fundamentally at instances where we are superior in the process in relation to the PPP, so I don't use the PPP as a benchmark. I use the constitution of the PNC as the benchmark, the traditions of the PNC as the benchmark, and not the PPP. So people will double down and say, well, you don't have no big competition like this. You don't have this open contest for leadership and so on. The PPP just gather them together and they do their thing. That is good for them. That is the basis upon which they function, and that is good for them. So I don't use that as a benchmark. I don't believe that the process is necessarily democratic, but who am I to say? I'm not a member of the PPP. It's like an American telling a Chinese person that you don't have democracy. That is their system under which they function. They consider democratic. That is how the PPP functions. But in relation to the PNC, we have a different system, a system that requires active participation of members and groups and active participation of the society at large, by support, by comment, by opinions, and moreover, rested on the principles of transparency.
You're too educated not to know that in a situation what you've just described the past 10 minutes or 15 minutes, that you need to strategize to bring about this level playing field. And is it not necessary, is it not strategically necessary for the other contenders who are facing these disadvantages to have a common platform? I say this in relation to a Facebook page of Mrs. Amanza Walton Desir, which was reproduced in the Sunday Chronicle last Sunday, in which some very, very blunt but very realistic sentiments were made by her. She's saying, look what is happening in the PNC, all this abuse, all this disrespect. If we cannot respect our leaders, respect our party, how could we lead a country? And when I read what she said, I will tell you, if you don't know what Aubrey Norton told me, and I'd like viewers to know this, he told me it twice, once in Georgetown and once in Linden. He was the campaign manager for Carl Greenwich. And he told me the day the Congress, the appalling attacks made on Greenwich, the insulting words made on Greenwich. What Norton told me on 2 occasions is what is happening to Mistress Desir.
I am aware of it. It's not only happening to her, it's happening to me. I saw flyers which I suspect may be circulating and emanating from persons right in the party, accusing me of all sorts of things, from corruption to being a PPP. But the funny thing is that only at Congress time, you suddenly distilled in this way. When I have to go to court and sacrifice my intellect and time and effort without payment as a dedication to the country and to the party, and to go and fight these cases for our interests, I'm well applauded, well recognized and happy, and everybody is good. And there's not a murmur that ROYSDALE FORDE is a PPP. But to the extent that he now decides, based on requests by party groups and nominations that he would have received to contest, you're now categorized as a PPP. And the party's membership, ultimately is the party membership, who would either permit this to happen by their silence or participate in the character assassination of members. It is not sufficient for Mr. Norton, as the leader of the party, to put out some sort of placid statement. I disapprove of these comments, I disapprove of these things. The manner in which you lead the party will require the members and the groups to understand that this is unacceptable conduct. So we're not getting that sort of clear direction to the membership of the party to refrain from these activities. We're having the appropriate, well-worded statement, which I don't believe is sufficient.
ROYSDALE, you have a party that has a central committee with some very, very top names. The former head of the army and now a doctor in international relations, Gary Best. You have a lawyer. You have Amanza Walton Desir, a lawyer. These are some big names in the PNC leadership. Can there be, I'm asking you now to guide our viewers, can there be an emergency meeting of the Central Committee to say, listen, these things have to stop, and a mandate is given to level the playing field and to put, because two lawyers will be there, yourself and Amanza Walton Desir.
And Gary Best.
Right, yes, he's also a lawyer.
And Gita Chandan.
Gita Chandan is a lawyer. So you have enough, as we say in common parlance, you have enough legal minds there. I am asking you now, is there, you may not want to give it away, but is there any intention of the contenders strategizing to level the playing field?
I have had conversations with a number of persons who would have been nominated, who all expressed the same opinion. Unfortunately, based on what is reported in the public, it comes across that it's ROYSDALE FORDE alone who feels this way. But I've had conversations with a number of other contestants, people who are on the CC but not necessarily contestants, and it is possible, all things are possible, Freddie, that the CC could meet and work out a mechanism to level the playing field. The question is there the leadership, is the leadership committed to doing something like that? You see, the CC is made up of about 30 persons, average 30 to 35 persons, and the majority of them are persons who would have been elected on the slate of Mr. Norton at the last party's biennial delegates conference in 2021. So we have the dynamic where a group of persons would be committed to a position of the leader, even in relation to certain issues which have to be discussed. So it is really a question of Mr. Norton being the leader of the party, establishing a commitment to leveling the playing field. And I'm saying today, the fact that you would have arrogated to yourself the position of being the Congress director would not provide the sort of hope that we are minded in such a way to ensure that there's a level playing field at this stage.
Akash?
Comrade Ford, guide me here, but I think it's pretty elementary to think that the PNCR it seems to be fragmented and fractured in some ways with all of this that's happening here. But I believe that if you're going to challenge the PPP at an election next year, I believe that the unity should have started showing now. You know, because when you have all of this infighting, it does the optics of it, man. It doesn't look good out there, and I'm sure there are factions who are being told to pull this way and pull that way. Then how are we gonna go to an election next year and face up to the PPP with a fragmented party?
I agree. The issue of unity of the party is the fundamental issue which needs to be addressed. But as I tell the comrades across the country where I would travel in relation to unity, unity is not something hanging in the sky. It's a real thing. And I believe that it must be unity within the party constitution. It must be intra-constitutional unity. You may wonder what I mean about this, and I explain it to the comrades in this way. We have 10 regions which mirror the administrative regions, 10 party regions, and we have an overseas area called NAR that covers North America and Canada. And in most of the regions, there have been no internal party elections held at the regional level. In Region 1, Region 2, Region 9 in particular, Region 10, Region 6, parts of Region 4 probably, Region 7 and 8, there have been no internal elections held. This is not ROYSDALE FORDE saying it, this is a fact. And this would have gone on for a number of years, even years preceding the election of Mr. Norton. So I don't want it to be misunderstood that I'm saying that this process or this negative issue started with Mr. Norton. But he's been a leader for 2 years. And in the 2-year period, none of these areas that I identified would have had their internal elections. We talk about unity, and we want to put unity out there as something at a front, you know, as a face. And I'm more interested in the deeper unity that exists within the party and within the organization. Right. What would have been the consequences, Akash, of not having it? You would have had divided members in each geographic area.
Absolutely.
People feeling that you would have been there for the past 10 years, 5 years, how long you would have been, and we would have had, we don't have an opportunity to have a voice, we don't have an opportunity to contest, no opportunity to say that we don't want Maxi Priest over Buja Banton in this particular area. When we see what is happening at the international level of NAR, for whatever reason, the leadership of NAR would have been suspended by the party.
Yes, I saw that.
So you see that the issue of unity in the party is more than the faces, for me, who are well known and familiar, appearing jovial and happy together. It's a deeper issue which needs to be addressed. So I'm saying that the best way to deal with it is to allow at the most basic levels, at the group level, at the regional level, people to have their internal elections held. In Region 9, for example, the party would have taken a decision to install an interim management committee in Region 9. And shortly thereafter, the PPP decided that they will go and storm the party's office in Region 9. What would have been the consequence of that? The party never submitted a nomination, for whatever reason, to contest a municipality, a township, that could easily would have been won by the party. In relation to Bartica, there's no functioning groups, no functioning local administrative authority in terms of the party in the area. What would have been the consequence? The PPP took, by way of plurality of votes, control of Bartica as a township. You would have lost Madhya. Correspondingly, there's no recently elected party mechanism in Region 8. So we could go through the country, and you would have seen really and truly where are the weaknesses within the organization and how they must be addressed. Having a Congress would not deal with these issues, right?
That's right.
What we would have seen is that having a Congress without addressing these issues is really and truly perpetuating problems in the communities, because you have people who feel trapped within the party, not being able to express an opinion, not being able to participate, not being able to challenge for local offices, and therefore divisions perpetuate themselves and permeate throughout the society that is being the party. I mean, not the general society. So these are the sort of issues which have to be dealt with in terms of establishing unity and concretizing it, and not simply saying that, as a leader of the party, I appointed 2 persons that supported Freddie when Freddie ran against me. That is not unity in terms of what is really needed. That is a bilateral arrangement, as far as I see it, with somebody who would have challenged you. But in terms of dealing with the issues of unity and getting to the bottom of what the sort of challenges that are faced is not unity. I propose, as part of our campaign, that apart from having the local elections held in each region and the leadership not participating, not favoring or backing any candidate, so you don't have any sort of capital being invested, you allow the people in the region to choose their leaders. But beyond that, I've proposed that we set up reconciliation committees, because you find, because of the problems which would have existed in the communities for a long period of time, party members have fallen out with one another. They have withdrawn their support at different degrees. They're no longer interested. So we need to establish that sort of unity to bring people back into the organization in a revitalized manner.
In every party around the world, there are the elders. The PNC has David Granger, who was a president. It has Joe Harmon. Mr. Collins was the head of the army. Mr. Felix was head of the police force. They must be watching. Is there any attempt for the older heads to say, no, this can't go down? Because as an analyst and someone who has to read and look at everything that is said politically in Guyana, there was no complaints when Norton was running for leadership in 2021. He was running against Basil Williams and Joe Harmon, and there was not even one paragraph in the papers that somebody doing this and somebody doing that. It went well, and Aubrey Norton won. They must, Mr. Granger and some of these older heads must be looking, and when they hear what you have to say, there must be a meeting of the elders to say, no, this is going in a self-destructive direction.
Well, I would hope that there is a meeting of the elders. I have reached out. I don't want to name them, but I would have reached out. I didn't reach out to Mr. Granger, and I didn't reach out to, who else you called? Mr. Harmon. But I reached out to other persons who you didn't call, fortunately. And I've expressed my opinion to them. I don't know whether they would have communicated my views, whether their views that they communicated to me also would have been passed on to the leadership of the party. But certainly this matter needs to be addressed. I am saying today that this is an important issue. It makes no sense just simply going through the form of having an election. The questions of transparency must be dealt with. We'll be moving forward in a few days' time towards a Congress, and I believe that these issues must be addressed.
But why, can I ask, why not Mr. Granger? He was the former president. He was as leader of the PNC, he was president of Guyana for 5 years. There has to be not a residue, but there has to be an existing quantity of influence there.
Well, I made an effort to contact him. I wasn't successful. I learned from some colleagues that he was out of the country. So I wasn't able to speak with him.
Mr. Basil Williams, Mr. Joe Harmon, Miss Amna Ali.
I haven't contacted them. I've contacted other persons who I believe have in regard to the dynamics of the party, who would have been able to step forward and to speak to the current leadership. And it wasn't ROYSDALE FORDE alone, excuse me, it wasn't ROYSDALE FORDE alone who did it. I'm aware that other persons who are concerned, whether they are contestants for leadership or other positions in the party, would have communicated to a wide cross-section of people.
You have been forthright so far in this interview, but you're an educated man. You must know that what you have said is going to, if it's not corrected, this is human nature, ROYSDALE. This is psychology of work. If what you have adumbrated here in terms of impropriety, irregularity, lack of transparency, lack of accountability, gross, for want of a better word, conflict of interest. If those things are not corrected, there has to be a seeping pessimism of people watching this who prefer you, prefer Mrs. Desir, and have an embrace of the PNC.
It is unfortunate that might be a byproduct of what I'm saying. The fact that
you have to say what you have to say.
I have to say what I have to say. Freddie, you've known me for a long time, and you actually cut off about 10 to 15 years before. You forgot to mention that you know me since I was a student at the University of Guyana. And
we became friends after that court thing in which you defied Mr. Rex McKay. This man defied Mr. Rex McKay.
Told me,
Rex McKay did not want
to come down.
The reduction of costs, and he defied his boss and for the reduction of costs. And that was so admirable. And we became, more known to each other from then. But yes, I've known you since.
What was the reception when you went back to Rex McKay's office after giving Freddie that 100,000 reduction?
150. It was 250, and we got it reduced to 100.
What was the reception?
I don't think it was a very happy day. But I'm glad that Freddie mentioned it, because, people somehow misunderstand me, misunderstand me. And many persons take sometimes a quiet demeanor to equate it to stupidity. The reason why I took the position in relation to Freddie, and it's a similar thing throughout my life, especially my adult professional life, I take a position on what I believe is fair and just, what social justice demands in the circumstances. And I felt that Freddie advancing the matter in court was not only for the benefit of Freddie and that student, but it was to provide a pathway to allow people, whether the Portuguese, Chinese, East Indian, Amerindian, Black, who would face that sort of oppression, administrative inconsideration for people's opportunities, that those things, those doors must be broken down. And I felt I was barely out of law school at that time. And I felt that this was wrong, that it was too much of a price to pay for pointing out a pathway for which other people could come and stand up and walk through. And that is what I've been doing over and over again. The case with the teachers union filed in court is a similar situation. I've not been paid for it professionally. I didn't get no money for it. But I believe it was a significant issue for the life of the Guyanese people, to ensure that they have a right to strike. And that when you go on strike and the circumstances under which you engage in a strike is such that the employer basically was oppressive, you must be paid. And these are fundamentally important advancements in the rights of the Guyanese people. So from the very early example with Freddie to where we are now, I believe, more importantly always, that individual rights must always be expanded and protected.
Let me ask you this. This is an awkward question, but I have to ask it. You have to do your job as a politician, a lawyer. I have to do my job as a journalist. Giving all the pieces fit together, and you have an election that is above board, do you think you can win the election?
I believe I could win the election. If it is a fair process, a transparent process, a process that allows people to think and reason, because by any assessment, I am not doing this for the likes. I'm not doing it because it's part of some conceited agenda to run for the leadership of the party, to put it on a resume. I'm doing it simply because I believe that the party itself requires new, modern, dynamic, aggressive leadership that is innovative and could take the party in a different philosophical position from where it is now. So that is why I believe once we have a level playing field, we reduce the opportunities for oppression, for dictation to people. I believe that the membership of the party recognizes that where we are cannot be something that we want to continue. So Mr. Norton is an experienced member of the party. My view is, and members ask me, and I'll say it again, I don't take the position that Mr. Norton is without value, must be pasteurized and put into some back room. But I believe that in every period of time, leaders will rise up by circumstance to deal with the issues that are confronting us. I believe where the party is at right now, having regard to its history, its current challenges, what is happening in its society at large, the increasing inequality, the presence of Exxon, the rise of corruption, the fact that 60-something% of the population really and truly are suffering because of the government's misallocation or misprioritization of resources. I believe that rather than spending significant amounts of money on roads and bridges and so on, more money will be spent advancing people's lives in a direct way. So I have a fundamentally different view from the PPP. I believe that my view is one that is supported by the party. I don't think there's any room for division between myself and any contestant or leading the party on these issues. But I believe that in relation to the party's operation, that these things need to be advanced in more coherent and aggressive way.
I was going to say on a lighter note, but nothing is light when it comes to these things, because it's a serious threat. Over the weekend, we've heard a voice note circulating over in another training camp where somebody's running for captaincy, and a member of the backroom staffing, I would believe, sent out a message and it says that I will cough you in your mouth. You ever had those kind of things coming here, or you walk a different path? No. But I have a question to ask. I'm just a light note.
No. I haven't heard anything like that. I don't rule it out that people may be harboring the sort of view, but I don't think that we have.
But there have been nasty there have been nasty words.
Of course. It's part of the.
But there has to be a limit. You can't just say people are thieves and people are betrayers and working for the other side. There got to be a limit in a campaign, man.
Let me ask.
I agree with you.
Let me read this. And this is from you. It was in the Stabroek News on April 8th. My decision to make myself available to be a candidate for the leader of the PNC was not an easy one. It came after recognizing that many members of our party are disenchanted, disgruntled, and simply dissatisfied with the current direction of the party is heading. The decision came after listening to many members who either called, messaged, or dropped by my office to say that something is wrong. We are heading in the wrong direction and something has to change. Ford said, the party requires new vision. What is your vision for this party moving forward, should you win? Well, not should you win. What is your vision?
My vision for the party, I would also have to go back what I said at different instances so far. Firstly, the party need unity. So the unity that I would want to bring to the party is one which the party groups and at the regional level are allowed to elect their leaders. We have to address the issue of members and how they relate to each other. So we have to have the creation and the infusion of a new internal political culture, so that many of the things that Freddie would have mentioned and the statements and the perceptions and so on must be excised from the party's culture. It's not going to happen overnight, but it must start from a commitment of the leaders. In relation to the youth arm of the party, the women's arm of the party, we need to put in place new programs that would attract them, would maintain membership and attract membership. In relation to the coalition of which we were part, you would have heard recently that the APNU would have voted out the PNC as the leader of the coalition. We need to really commit some more time and energy in relation to coalition building. The concern of the APNU parties that did it was that there would be no meeting for 2 years. We need to ensure that those things are done. In terms of the internal operations of the party constitution requires that you have a general council once every quarter. We have obeyed that in the breach. We have had about 3 general councils over 2.5 years. This is a critical body, critical institution of the party, where members across the length and breadth of the country will be able to come, express their views, party policies would have been debated and advanced. So those things I would ensure certainly happens. The party Central Executive Committee would have to meet regularly in compliance with the Constitution. In terms of the finances of the party, those things would have to be dealt with by the appointment of an effective auditor and appointment of a proper treasurer. Then we have to create the sort of environment that is necessary by going into the communities and articulating views and opinions and policies which would be driven by consideration as to what is happening. Every day in this country, there are more and more violations of different natures that are taking place. The leader would have announced that he's not interested in protests. I have a completely different view. I'm not saying that people must just be running down the road marauding, but protests as a weapon in a political process, Freddie would agree with me, I hope, is critical. How it is executed is what is important, but to rule it out as saying that you must not protest anything, which is the natural consequence of what was said, is wrong. So we need to go into the communities, irrespective of where they're located, particularly the African Guyanese community, the East Indian communities, the communities in the hinterland where the Amerindians or the indigenous people reside, and establish a connection with them. We must be able to establish a presence in each and every community so at local government elections we could participate and advance the position of the party forward.
The last election was affected by the last PNC leadership election was affected by COVID because you had some virtual voting and people physically present. The one before that, I was at the debate of the contenders, Mr. Guyanese, James Bond, Dr. Faith Hardin, Mr. Granger. It was held at St. George's School on Church Street, which has been burned down but it's being rebuilt. And the school was filled. Is there any possibility of having that debate where you, Mr. Norton, Gally Best, Samanza Walton, Dizay would speak to people?
I have heard of no suggestion of anything like that happening, but I believe what you're talking about, Freddie, was the part of the primary process, which would have been implemented around 2010, 2011.
Yeah, 2010.
Yeah, which led to the election or the identification of Mr. Granger as the presidential candidate. The party had a primary process where every person who wanted to contest for the presidency at the time, they went countrywide, and they had that sort of interactive process. I don't think it was ever quite done for the leadership itself of the party.
Is there any possibility that the other contenders who feel, well, you have spoken, Mr. Zamantha Fortin Desire was very, very, very acidic in a condemnation of how people are being attacked. I know Gary Best very well. I taught him at Eugene. That class for that year, he was the favorite of the class. He's very outspoken. Is there any possibility of the frontrunners meeting and say, listen, let's pick a consensus candidate and go into this election?
I see nothing stopping that from happening, but it hasn't happened. I have had, as I mentioned, discussions with all the potential frontrunners to discuss with them what has been happening over the party's period in terms of its elections, mechanisms. So I've had that sort of discussion, but we have not gotten to that stage.
All right. We've got 5 minutes more. I'll just ask Akash to be quick. I will come with the next question, and then you sum up.
Mr. Forde, in a few days' time, big decisions are going to be made here as relates to the Congress. What would you like to say to your supporters and members of the PNCR that may not necessarily be your supporters, but they need some clarification? Because obviously people are tugging at you from different angles, putting different things in your ears. You really don't know which direction to go. What would you like to say to your people watching you out there right now?
I was going to see if they're for the wrap up, but Freddie could ask your question. And I could,
okay, good.
What I wanted to ask is, the delegate, I've been told, I read that the delegates are going to be 3,000.
You know more than me.
I just heard Miss Cathy Hughes from the AFC. She was speaking to the press and she said, you can't compare the AFC and the PNC. Our delegates will be 300. The PNC delegates at the Congress will be 3,000.
I'm not sure. I guess he may be using that as an example to show the vast difference in the number of delegates.
It may not be 3,000.
It may not be 3,000 delegates.
So my question before you sum up is, are you going to these people, meeting with them and saying, listen, this is my balance sheet. This is what I have performed yeoman legal service for this party. I haven't charged a cent. This is my balance sheet. Are you going to them? Are you going to them and present? I always believe, ROYSDALE, in this particular society, you have to beat your own drum. Nobody's going to beat it for you. You have to beat your own drum. If you went on the seawall and saved 5 youths from drowning, you have to tell the Guyanese people, I saved 5 youths from drowning. Nobody is going to say that for you. I almost drowned saving a guy on the seawall. So are you going to people?
Yes, I'm doing that, Freddie. Up to yesterday, despite it was a holiday, we were in Bartica. We met with comrades there, we met with delegates, we met with members of the public. I had an opportunity to interact with them and explain to them what I've been doing, what I plan to do for the party. So I've been doing that. A few days ago, we were in the quarantine, so we're working around the country. In terms of
sum up now.
In terms of where we are, these elections are very critical for the party. It is critical because I believe at this stage the party needs to project a particular image. It needs to project itself as a coherent, sane-minded, democratic institution. In view of what is happening in the country, the economic disparities, the sort of oppression that is taking place, there's a critical need, firstly, for a more sound and aggressive opposition in relation to the issues. So I believe at this stage, the Guyanese people, the members of the party and the delegates have a very important decision to make. And the decision that they must make must not be for the benefit of any particular leader or any particular candidate must be done after careful assessment as to where they want their lives to go and want the party to go. As I tell the comrades and delegates where I travel, most times I say this to them: you go home, you open your fridge, you open your cupboard, and if you're satisfied that the party has been led properly over the last 2 years, you vote for the same. But if you go home and you bust your fridge,
I like
and you bust your cupboard, and you're dissatisfied about how the party would have been led over the last 2 years, vote for me.
All right.
We got to go. That office that I once went in and collected that monitor, that computer monitor, you still there?
I'm still here. You could come and check.
Freddie, come and see if anything else there. Anything else there?
More monitor, Freddie.
You got another monitor?
Freddie, come and see if anything else there.
ROYSDALE,
I actually got another monitor.
you got another monitor?
You want the monitor, Freddie?
Listen, man, it was nice.
Thanks,
nice to have you. And good luck, man.
Thank you
From
very
the bottom
much.
of my heart.
Yeah,
Good luck.
same here, man. Best of luck. And
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I really hope to see you there.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching us. Our guest this evening was a man who needs no introduction, prominent attorney ROYSDALE FORDE, and the man running to be the leader of the People's National Congress. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you again. We'll see you again next episode. Bye-bye.
Bye.